Hey everyone, Kevin here, and welcome back to my channel. So, something that a lot of people outside of education don't really seem to understand is that general education teachers are rapidly becoming, well, not general education teachers. But what do I mean by that? Well, for many years, we've had this delineation between teachers who taught core subjects and extracurriculars, teachers who taught English language learners or ELs, and special education teachers, not counting career and technical educators or all the ones who fall into subcategories of the ones I just mentioned. Now, those roles have become incredibly blurred, and general education teachers who were already under incredible strain are being saddled with even more paperwork and preparation for students who either shouldn't be in their class in the first place or have needs that they aren't well trained to handle. And remember, general ed teachers are trained in their subject matter, creating lessons, and how to deliver that content to students of varying age levels. That scope was specific and helped teachers to not only succeed, but excel at their jobs because they focus on specific topics and things. Plus, it prevents burnout by having teachers not stretch themselves too thinly. The issue now is that they're doing so many different roles that educators are struggling to keep up and don't have the professional training to do many of those things effectively. There's such an overlap now between what general education teachers should be doing, which is classroom instruction, and being teachers for special education students, English language learners, along with having to function as de facto counselors, technologists, ed tech support staff, trauma informed instructors, literacy specialists, and who knows what else. All of that is only complicated by changing student bodies over the last decades, with increasing violence and lack of repercussions for misbehavior from our administrators, who tend to sit on their hands rather than do what their staff needs. What these changing demands for general education teachers lead to, though, is not only unprecedented levels of work, but being saddled with students who we can't effectively teach or be there for. And as you guessed it, that means more students get left behind, in contrast to what we were supposed to be doing with the No Child Left Behind Act. Let me go through a few examples, though, starting with special education students, shall we? For what, 50, 60 years, we've had special education students taught by special education teachers in dedicated classes geared toward their disability, whether it was mild, moderate, or severe. They got privatized attention and instruction, had a different set of curriculum expectations, and generally had the chance to achieve what they could regardless of why they were in special ed. Now, though, we instead have this mentality which argues that somehow exclusionary or discriminatory. So instead, about 10 to 15 years ago, we started mainstreaming special education students to having almost their entire day in general education classes, with just one being with a dedicated special ed teacher, unless they had such severe disabilities or needs to still be in a class of their own. As I mentioned earlier, what this does, though, is saddle the general education teachers with more work and things that they aren't trained to handle, thus spreading them even thinner than they already are. We now have to read sometimes in the ballpark of like 50 pages of individualized education plans or IEPs per special ed student we have, and not only fulfill what's in the IEP, but also routinely write pages and pages of documentation of how we are not only doing that, but what steps we're taking to make sure they succeed, and attend quarterly IEP meetings that we had to get pulled out of class for, and thus lose instructional time with every other student due to that. I'm not kidding. In my second week of my first year of teaching, I was pulled out for an IEP meeting that I didn't even know was happening in the first place, nor was I trained on what to do at one. I sat there kind of just trying to figure out who and what we were talking about, and had to basically make up subplans off the top of my head in 2 minutes for the random person who covered my class for half an hour. It was really frustrating and hurt the other 35 kids who lost out on me being there because of that. And similar arguments for English language learners, too, who often have their own classes but are being mainstreamed to the point that they are barely getting any intensive English based instruction. Though there is admittedly research to suggest that ELs do get some benefits from being in general education classes, where they can practice their English in conversational settings. There is plenty of other research to also suggest they struggle because of the academic language they aren't able to understand. Literally, the meeting that made them decide to not rehire me in my first full time teaching position was over an EL who was struggling in a few classes, but they were conveniently all English and history courses, which, as I plainly told the assistant principal in the meeting, was where that kid would naturally have a hard time since they're both text and language based disciplines. She didn't like that realistic answer, though, and the next day told me that they weren't renewing my contract. And keep in mind, California is one of the only states where we are actually trained to manage ELs because the certification to do so is embedded in our general education credentials. The vast majority of teachers in the country aren't equipped to handle them at all, though, and we're doing them a disservice. Even worse, early in my career, we offset this problem by having dedicated special ed and EL aides who would follow the students around to their general education classes and help both us and the kids they were assigned to succeed. They were awesome and so helpful by being there to bridge that learning gap. Heck, I keep in touch with one of my EL aides for years after I left the school, but now there's no funding for them. And even when there is, good luck finding anyone who wants to take that job. Because aides are just as overworked and burnt out as the teachers are and have left the profession in droves for the same reasons we've left. Remember this clip I've shown in many other videos? This is literally one of those special ed aides being assaulted and beaten to a pulp by a student, which left her with severe injuries and PTSD. So, yeah, you wonder why the aides aren't coming back either. Overall, teachers are consistently sharing that they feel unprepared to address the needs of students requiring assistive technology, differentiated or integrated instruction, or trauma informed care. And we're seeing how the desperation from that and the extra workload is burning out teachers. If we want to fix the retention and recruitment crisis and keep teachers for longer, we must reform credentialing programs to actually prepare general ed teachers for the raw realities of modern classrooms and give existing teachers the training and support they need to meet all the kids in the room to the best of their ability. General education teachers have been stretched so thinly that all it takes is something very small to make them break, as we've seen with literally millions of teachers and support staff quitting or retiring early since January of 2020. And you know what else? Fewer and fewer are coming in to replace those losses too, leading to bigger class sizes and further impact on every student's ability to learn effectively. What we really need to do is wake up to how bad things are, or else we'll never move forward and both the teachers and students won't get what they need to be successful and to grow as people. But I think that's it for today. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you could take a moment to click like and subscribe or leave a comment below, that would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, though, I've been Kevin, and I will see you in the next video.